Hi everybody, this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading on June 3rd, 2025. Actually, this was supposed to be recorded yesterday, June 2nd, but you know, the loser criminals, they like to use their frequencies to knock me out and stole literally an hour and a half of my time. So I'm recording this at 1:33 a.m. So I received a comment from Deborah. Thank you, Deborah, for pointing out that in the video that I posted on June 1st of that man trespassing in the red vehicle, saying that he was paid, he was asked to drive down my driveway, that two of you have blown up the photo, slowed it down, and saw that there was some energy weapon or some device that was deployed at the same time the guy was backing out. So now I posted that in the last video where we saw a puff. Let me show you. We saw a puff after the guy, let me show you here. We saw this puff of energy at the same time the guy was backing out of the driveway right here. This came from right to left, and I was in right here. I was walking right here on the grass. Now what we didn't see is what was happening at the county road there near this grouping of rocks, which used to be my gate. But look at that. Do you think it's a cloaked individual or an energy device being deployed? Inquiring minds like to know. But thank you so much, con artists, for downloading this and circling it, and thank you, Deborah, for locating that this was happening at the same time, 4:16, at the same time that the gray puff fog was coming from right to left, right there and right there. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, I'm going to have to slow up and pay closer attention to my photos. Thank you so much for locating this, because I'm so busy here. I don't have time to look at everything that happens in my life. I've got all these animals to care for, but I am definitely going to pay closer attention, because if this is what you all claiming that it is, these are energy weapons being deployed against me, well, this is bona fide evidence of an assault, isn't it? So, on that note, I have something to read. And this is the same individual who wrote the Revelations of Method. This is the individual who's highly intelligent and has cobbled together some things. Again, you know, every once in a while she starts thinking of things, and this is one of the things that she wanted to discuss. She said that I hope you find it useful and that you're able to read what I send you if you're inclined. I would appreciate it, actually, since they don't want me doing interviews, it seems. Well, I can't imagine why they wouldn't allow you to do an interview. I'll interview you. Okay, so here we go. This is what K, we'll just leave it at K, the letter K, wants to discuss. Many TIs are ex-military, but few, I think, would argue that much of the targeting program is run through and by the U.S. military, as well as the militaries of other nations. What might not be popularly known, though, is ex-military is used extensively as soldiers on the ground. That's right, I have the Inhuman Terrain team on my property right now as we speak. The reasons for this compliance will constitute the bulk of the discussion of this writing. Interestingly, veterans experience a 33% arrest rate as opposed to the 20% rate of non-veterans. Vets are twice as likely to be incarcerated as civilians, some due to their elevated violent crime rate. When we consider that most of the civilian criminals likely have no direction in life, their numbers make sense. But what about the vets? Supposedly, the military gave them a purpose, a direction, an education to give them a solid start in life. Instead, we see that they have higher rates of violent crimes, arrests, and incarceration. Why is that? Let's see what the psych studies have to say. And I apologize for my voice. This is a result of being put to sleep and targeting the left side of my mouth. And I'm drinking some coconut water at the same time because I feel very parched for some unknown reason. According to Grok, a 2024 study by the National Consortium of the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, START, the acronym, at the University of Maryland used a sophisticated methodology to assess predictors of mass casualty offenders, MCO, mass casualty offenders, including T-related acts. I don't want to use that word a lot because it gets tagged, so including T-related acts, the letter T for the longer word. Veterans were 2.41 times more likely to be classified as MCOs than non-veterans, outranking mental health issues, criminal history, or substance abuse as predictors. MCOs include Ts, for example, the Oklahoma City bombing, and non-ideological mass shooters. The psychological factors like combat-related PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is higher in veterans, and social alienation were cited as contributors, amplified by military skills, i.e., weapons training. A 2021 study, Military Training and Mental Health Risks, Scientific Archives, aimed at determining whether military training predisposes service personnel to negative mental health issues, found that only 23.40 of post-traumatic stress disorder affected service members actually seek help. It further notes that training methods designed to break down individual autonomy and rebuild it with a military framework can have lasting psychological effects. I'm just going to add that the brain is still developing through the ages of 23. What are the ages that men and women usually enter the military? It could be at 18, 19, 20. It is before their brain has completely developed. So this makes perfect sense to me, that their training methods that are designed to break down individual autonomy and rebuild it within the military framework that has lasting psychological effects. Absolutely, because the brain is still developing at this time. Conspicuously absent are statistics of ex-military running black ops for government, also known as the targeting program, et al. Addition of this demographic could skew numbers drastically Think of their predicament. No other real options other than selling the skills they've learned, as far as they can see. The government that trained them approaches them asking for what I expect to be presented as, quote-unquote, the U.S. James Bond operations, but amount to nothing more than terrorizing innocent people and kids, who they soon discover is approved by their employers. And what about the animals also? Farm animals and pets. Self-awareness of their role in this obvious conflict of good versus evil can't be avoided for too long, I expect. Putting them on the hook as individuals. I'm no lawyer, but the charges would include the worst in the law books for these people. And that includes every last one of them. The most sympathetic of us should at the least demand the death penalty in quick fashion. Something they do not have in mind for us. For even couriers, when it all gets exposed. Interestingly, there was little variation between active military and civilians regarding violent crime, but serious differences between civilians and veterans. What it means, I think, is that the military brings these people in and trains them, gives them that promised home and direction before yanking it away from them and sticking them in the civilian world. This leaves many without direction, especially considering there is likely few civilian jobs for, say, explosive experts or snipers. In fact, their skills are what they have to fall back on, with many becoming mercenaries for hire or resorting to T. T is an interesting word. Commandeered, I think, for political purposes, sort of like in the name of national security. I added that. Its listed definition is the use of violence or the threat of violence, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political goals. The American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, 5th edition. It paints with a broad brush stroke and includes much but popular usage, has less expansive meaning. The word has been weaponized itself, used only in one specific situation, the David versus Goliath scenario. When massive superpowers destroy the lands of less powerful people, and you don't think it happens, Google the number of countries the U.S. alone has fomented coups in. I would list them, but I want to keep this at a reasonable length. Unsurprisingly, we see a desire for retribution. They want to fight back, but they have no fighter jets, no tanks available to them. The less fortunate use what they have, and even this has been determined to be evil when used in their defense. True T's present as a campaign against the weak by the strong, i.e., governmental abuse. This is what we see in the targeting program. Governmental abuse of citizenry for unclear reasons. Then the true T is the tool of the powers that be, and it's an American staple along with apple pie and baseball. But it's happening all over the world simultaneously, and most seem to blame the U.S. CIA, and I can't blame them. The three-letter agencies in the U.S. along with the with NASA and others are working against the people. It's a slippery slide, I expect. They convince you that you're separate from the rest of the world, chosen even. They fill heads with ideas of James Bond missions and make the dupes feel like they're actually somebody now. It takes a certain personality type, one that sees lowering others as raising themselves. For the program of targeting, I suspect they look to recruit psychopaths and those that can operate unencumbered by pesky consciences. With ex-military, these folks would have been recognized early, and their paths could then be influenced to land them in the straits that see people agree to things that they might not have otherwise. They say after the first one, it gets easier. Many are familiar with the Stanford prison experiment, SPE. I actually just watched or listened to that recently. It was an experimental situation using Stanford students to gauge behaviors of groups on opposite sides of authority, with the results surprising all. It simulated a prison environment to examine how individuals conform to assigned roles, particularly in authoritarian settings. Some were guards, others were prisoners, and they were placed in settings that tested the relationships. Guards became increasingly authoritarian, using, and get this, psychological tactics like humiliation, sleep deprivation, and punishment, like solitary confinement and push-ups, to control prisoners. Sound familiar? Apparently, a very human list of tendencies, so ideas of aliens being behind the targeting program need to be put to rest. I absolutely agree. It's has nothing to do with any aliens. It's all the government. I've been saying this forever. Scheduled for 14 days. 14 days is Saturn. Satan. It's a Saturn cycle, 14. The experiment had to be cut short at only 6 due to the emotional distress and mental breakdowns. It appears that the intoxications of authority breed abuse of authority. Many are also familiar with the Milgram experiment, and a disturbingly revealing thing it was. Stanley Milgram, PhD, social psych, conducted this experiment at Yale University during his professorship there, which set out to investigate obedience to authority up to and including extremely distressful points that were lived as real by the unwitting subjects. It wanted to see how far people would go when given direct orders. The subject was told that he or she was to administer electric shocks to a person that could be heard but not seen behind a divider, only when the unseen person gives the wrong answer to questions being posed by a teacher, moderator, authority figure. The shocks increased in severity with every wrong answer. But the truth was it was all an act, and the person being shocked was an actor. The stage was only for the benefit of observing the one being requested to continue administering shocks at the prodding of authority figure when given the wrong answer. I strongly recommend that YouTube videos be assessed for this information, since the severity of it is difficult to understand through text, but know that the subjects were convinced that they were administering serious pain to another person, and despite this, 65% of those that participated did so to completion. The purported range of shocks went from 15 to 450 volts, and all participants went as far as administering up to 300 volts. This human trait is being taken advantage of by our government, as you might expect. What I've attempted here is to explore the possible reasons for widespread military involvement, including veterans, and it appears much feeds into it. I want to say that I put the feelers out there to get the views of the targeted veteran for this piece, but was unable to find any. So guys, if you're a targeted veteran, email me. Leave a comment down below. Let's hear what you have to say. So there were those that claimed to know one, hearsay, sightings of unlike that of Bigfoot. Some even claimed to be one, but when I attempted to engage in conversation, they went silent. About 5 to 7% of the U.S. population are currently serving in the military or are veterans, and I don't see that figure translating to the targeted community. Perhaps they're more aware of what they're actually facing and understandably hesitant to speak up, or indeed, They might be getting it worse than any of us. I don't know. But in the end, the silence is a horrible sound, as I can't help but feel that it's incriminating. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I agree. Because at least what is happening to me, and I know what is happening to a lot of people, it's not being done by your neighbors. It's being done by somebody who is specifically trained in being stealth. Like here on my property. They do use cloaking devices. And I have to wonder, and thank you, K, the letter K, for this is very illuminating and interesting and absolutely deserves more attention. And I hope that you write a little bit more about this, about how many TIs are ex-military, but few would argue that much of the targeting program is run through and by the U.S. military as well as the militaries of other nations. That's a little scary. If you just heard some snap, crackle, pop in the background, it's my bug zapper going wild. Either that it's bugs, or there's some energy weapon trying to attack me that it intercepted. So what might not be popular known is that ex-military is used extensively as their soldiers on the ground. The reason for this compliance constitutes the bulk of her discussion at this writing. So anyway, I would love to hear what you have to say about this. Leave a comment down below. And also, tell me if you think that this photo here, I'm going to blow it up again, down my driveway, opposite me, it almost looks like 3 puffs, doesn't it? It looks like 3 puffs, 1, 2, 3. Do you think that's directed energy, or do you think that's a cloaked individual watching what's going on? Leave a comment down below. This is Lorraine Alternative Homestead. I'm going to sign off for now.